and why we do this and how we can get out of it. But we start off with physical addictions, and so the first thing, obviously, is to realize that it is a problem. And it's really crazy that people have got so much ego, they always want to be right, they don't admit their faults until they cause so much problems for other people and themselves. So you don't need a doctor or a psychiatrist to tell you you're addicted to certain things. It should be obvious to you. And first of all, we take the stigma away from these things. You don't need to blame yourself. You're not a second-class person. You're not inferior because you get addicted to these things. It just happens to some people. So one of the nice things which I have always learned is not to judge people, not to think that you are superior because you are free of all these things and these other people are just low-lifes. No, this is just part of our world. And we look upon addiction, just like any other sickness, any other illness. If you got the flu, you are treated, you are cared for. And so one thing which I've always been teaching people, there's a lot of sickness around this time of the year, I say coughs and sneezes, and many of you may have gone to see the doctor in the last 1 month, but how many of, when you go to see the doctor, tell the doctor, "Doctor, there is something wrong with me. I've got an irritation in my throat, there's something wrong with me. My stools are coming out all wet and runny. There's something wrong with me. I've got a pain here, an ache there." Why do you say that? There's nothing wrong with being sick. It's part of life. Can you put your hand up if there's anyone in this room who's never been sick in your life? Be honest, has anyone never been sick? Wow, I mean, you've all been sick from time to time, so being sick is normal. In fact, it'd be really abnormal. If you'd never been sick, you'd get all these doctors doing tests on you to find out what the heck's going on. That'd be really wrong with you if you never got sick. So why is it when you go and see the doctor, the first thing you say is, "Doctor, there's something wrong with me. I'm sick." Straight away you're stigmatizing sickness. So I ask you, and I tell you, I've been telling this for years, if you have to go and see the doctor tomorrow, next week, next month, this year, please tell the doctor when you go into his room or her room, "Doctor, there's something right with me. I'm sick again." Now, honestly, that changes the whole ball game. You don't get stigmatized. You don't feel afraid of going to see the doctor. You don't think there's something wrong with you. It's normal. It's okay to be sick. So don't ever think there's something wrong with me. I've got an addiction. So there's something right with me. I've got an addiction. So straight away, you're not stigmatizing it, which means more people will actually acknowledge they've got a problem. But sometimes you may have someone in your family or a friend who's addicted to all these sorts of stupid stuff. So how can you actually to do that? And this little idea, it's a very hard thing to do, but it actually works. And this came from, I was looking at one of the old friends who was a monk with me years and years and years ago, when one of the people we know very well, he was a very, very good monk, but he couldn't stop having sexual fantasies. He was addicted to sexual fantasies. So he went to see the great Ajahn Brahm, and he said, "What can I do to stop these things? I want to be a monk, I want to meditate. How can I stop my addiction to sexual fantasies?" He said, "Very easy. All you need to do is the next time there's a public talk, you get up and give the talk and tell them exactly what you're thinking, or your sexual fantasies in detail. People are very interested. They'll probably listen all the while through." But of course that's far too embarrassing. You never did it. But that's the thing, to admit what you're doing. And so if you won't admit it, if you've sort of got a drinking problem, a gambling problem, or any other sort of problem, especially drinking problems or drug problems, one of the good things to do, say a drinking problem, you've got sort of a partner or a parent or a kid who's got a drinking problem. When they're drunk, get out your mobile phone, video them. Video them. Because the trouble is when people are addicted and misbehaving, they're addicted to anger or something, always shouting at you and misbehaving, they don't know what they're doing. They're drunk, which means they're not aware. They're angry, which is a form of emotional drunkenness. You're not in your right mind. So take a video of them. And when they're sober, or when they say anger, they're relaxed, show it to them. So this is what you look like. When you come home from the casino, when you come home from, if you're addicted to gambling, when you come home after getting drunk, this is what you look like. Show it to them. Very often that is a big eye-opener for them because they don't know what they look like or how they behave. When they see it on a screen, woo, that really shows them objectively what they're like. That's like a mindfulness exercise, being aware of what it's like. And if that doesn't stop them getting some sort of treatment, then go to the next stage and post that video on YouTube. That will work for sure. When they get embarrassed, this is what they're like when they get drunk. That will give them a great incentive to do something about the problem. That's the first thing, to realize it is a problem with these addictive behaviors. Number two, once we realize it's a problem, how do we overcome it? The first way to overcome it is just temporary. Just give up that addiction for, say, a week or something. Because number one, people who are with addictions, they think, I'm in control, I can give it up any time. Smoking, no problem, I just don't want to give it up. And as one smoker said, he said, well, what happened? It doesn't really matter, smoking. You smoke, you die. You give it up, you die. Both ways you die. What's the problem? That's not the point. It's how you die and how soon you die. But a lot of times I don't think it's a problem. So if they really think they're in control, try giving it up just for a short period of time. Now, for monks and nuns, we have a period called our Rains Retreat. It's coming up soon, the end of next month. July the 26th, we have our entry to the Rains Day. And that means after that time, for 3 months, we don't come here. Because if we came here every Friday, then you'd take us for granted, and you wouldn't appreciate us anymore. All these jokes you wouldn't really appreciate, which is a good segue for today's really bad joke. So those people who don't like bad jokes, get out now or put your fingers in your ears, because here's a terrible one. It's about addictions and the problem, realizing there's a problem. Because there was this poor man who had intestinal worms. And he went to see the doctor, and the doctor said, well, there's two treatments. There's the chemical pills, the medication. He said, I don't like these modern chemicals. I don't trust them. They do terrible things to the body. So, well, you got the natural way. He said, I'll have the natural way. So it's a bit uncomfortable, but it always works 100%. He said, I'll take the natural way. He said, okay, well, every day for the next week, exactly at noon, 12 noon precisely, I want you to put a suppository, up your backside, of a mini cheese sandwich. And 5 minutes later, put another suppository, a mini chocolate bar. And do that for 7 days and come back for your next appointment 1 week from today at 11:45. He did that. It was very uncomfortable, a bit embarrassing, but he followed the orders. And when he went back for his next appointment, he said, I can still feel the worms inside. It didn't work. He said, this is the last part of the treatment. And so, trousers down on the bench. And then the doctor put, exactly at 12 noon, another cheese sandwich suppository up his backside, and then waited with a hammer. 12:05, no chocolate bar. 12:10, no chocolate bar. 12:15, this little head came out, and the worm said, hey, where's my chocolate bar? Whack with the hammer, and that was the end of the worm. Now that shows what addiction does to you. That little worm was addicted to a chocolate bar at 12:05 every day for a week. And that causes death. We don't think it's an addiction, but it does kill us. So, I think I heard that when I was a kid. But anyway, it's a nice one. Stupid one, but who cares? So, it's the addictions they do kill it. Once we realise there's a problem, it's something we can do. And the first thing is just give it up for a little while. Can you do without a chocolate bar, little worm? It's only for a day. That gives you an idea how strong the addiction is. So we have our 3 months rains retreat. So we often give up things for 3 months. Believe it or not, the 1 year, people kept on telling me, Ajahn Brahm, you're addicted to tea. You always have your cup of tea. Cup of tea in the morning, cup of tea in the afternoon. I said, okay, I'm going to give it up for 3 months. And then all the monks came up to me and said, please don't do that. I said, why not? Because they said another monk tried that. And he was a pain in the butt for 3 months without his tea. He was such an awful person to live with. No, I said, I'm going to try it to see if I'm addicted to it. So I gave it up for 3 months. I was very happy, very peaceful, no problem at all. This is actually how you see whether you're addicted to something. See, give it up for a little while, just temporarily. Now the point is, if you say just give it up totally, sometimes for some people that's too scary. And the nice thing is, you can give it up just for a week and then see what happens. It's a little bit of a trick psychology, because if you give it up for a week, what happens is, you can go back again. It's not so scary when it's not ultimate, have to give it up forever, that's it, no more. And that's the way our monasticism works. As a monk, you can stay as a monk or a nun, however long you like. If you don't like it, you can leave and go back into the world again. So there's no fear in it. You're making a commitment, oh my God, do I really want to do this? Do I have to go back again? Sometimes it's the same with, you really shouldn't say this with marriages. It's never a one-way street. If it doesn't work out, you give it everything you've got, you can always leave again. And you know what we call, because this is Buddhism, we know what we call divorce in Buddhism. We don't call it divorce anymore. We call it recycling. Yes, we call it recycling. Because no one gets divorced in Buddhism, they get recycled. Some people have been recycled many times. It happens, sometimes they start, sometimes they end. So the nice thing is that you don't have this fear that if you make a decision, you have to live with that for the whole rest of your life. It's like there's no way out. There's no U-turn possible. And that is really scary. So with addictions, if we can just say, we'll give it up for, say, a month or 2 months or 6 weeks or whatever, give yourself a time. And there's a way out if it's too hard for you. Which means, number one, you're more likely to try giving it up. And number two, what usually happens is when you do give up an addiction, you feel so free. You feel empowered. You feel good about yourself. Self-esteem. You've done something difficult. And that empowerment, that lift of self-esteem, that degree of happiness and freedom, that is what often counteracts you taking up that addiction again. Because that's what I did when I was a young man. I was a Buddhist, and my teacher kept on telling me, you shouldn't drink alcohol. I liked my beer. I didn't like the other stuff, but beer, I used to love beer. And he said, no, you can't take that anymore. You're a Buddhist. You meditate. Do I really have to? And I said, yes, you do. I said, okay, I'll give it a try. And as soon as I tried it, just giving up beer, I felt this great sense of power inside of me. It was like I had the choice, and I was exercising the choice. I could take it or leave it, and I was proving to myself I could leave it. And I could go into a party and still enjoy myself and have... Actually, I found out it was more fun when I was sober. Okay, I was only 18, 19 at the time. The best time at a party, when you find a nice girl, you're in the corner messing around. When I was just have beer and alcohol, I didn't remember that part. And that was the best part. Now I was sober, I had much more fun. And so little things like that, ordinary things, meant you started to enjoy yourself more. Which meant, what's the point of going back to alcohol? And I was a student at the time. It cost so much money. I had so much more money to use for other things. So what was actually happening? I was trying to give up these addictions. Just for a short time, see what happens. And number one, you felt strength inside of yourself. Inner strength. You'd done something which was difficult to do. And number two, you enjoyed yourself more. Now that's with the other addictions which people have. If you ask them to give it up forever, sometimes they never will. It's just too much. Just for a short time. That's why we do have, things like range retreats. We have, say in traditional Buddhist countries, you have Poya days, or 1 prayer in Thailand. The moon days, when you spend 1 day a week being good. Giving up alcohol, not arguing with your wife, blah, blah, blah. Whatever it is, 1 day, just trying to stop yourself. And you can go back again the next day. That means you test yourself out. Can you do it? And what's it like? What's it like to be free of those addictions? What's it like not to have to go to the casino? What's it like to do sort of 7 days without watching any porn on the internet? What's it like? And then when you actually do that for 7 days, you can go back afterwards. It means you've got a bit more control. And then you can exert more control. And the nice thing is you feel really powered by this. And you feel good, you feel free. You realize, once you have that perspective of being free, that it's the porn is controlling you. It's actually, you're in a prison, you have to have your hit. You have to have that pleasure of drugs. You have to have that pleasure, whatever it is you're addicted to. And you see that only when you're free, for just a week. And that will give you the wisdom, experience. You can do it, you know the benefits, you've tried it out, just a bit of an experiment. Then that empowers you. And it's usually that pretty easy to stop it afterwards. But once you do stop it afterwards, sometimes there's always a big danger of just going back again. Just, what's it called? Just regressing, getting back into that addiction. Oh, I'll just try it just for old time's sake. Or any excuse. Now the problem is that it's so easy to actually get off an addiction, but it's hard to keep off it for a long period of time. So keeping off it, that's a difficult one. And it's something we learnt in meditation especially, which is called programming your mindfulness. And I've used this a lot for all types of stuff in meditation, but also with dealing with addictions. For example, there's this guy smoking, and he said, I'd try to give up smoking, I'd give it up for a week, 2 weeks, but then suddenly there's a cigarette in my mouth, and I don't know what happened. It's just a habit which is so ingrained in me that, I don't know what I'm doing, and I'm smoking again. And I don't know how I got there. And it is because a lot of addictions are habits. And a habit is something you're not really aware of. Just like the driving. You can be driving and talking to somebody, and it's so automatic. You don't really think about it. It's like breathing. It's like your heart beating. It's like digesting. It becomes an autonomous physical process, which you don't have to think about. You just do it. And your attention is somewhere else. Now, so what we do here to get the mindfulness coming into the key area here, say with smoking, I get the smoker who keeps on regressing, or there's a word, I forget what it is, regressing is good enough, going back to smoking, and I say, now, what I want you to do, when you're calm, quiet, peaceful, when you're feeling happy, when you've got some mindfulness and energy, make a resolution. Say to yourself, something like, I will not pick up that first cigarette. I will not pick up that first cigarette. I will not pick up that first cigarette. Say that to yourself, much slower than I said it. And pay as full attention as you possibly can. And then forget it. And it's incredible how that works. It's like self-hypnosis, auto-conditioning, whatever you call it. I call it programming your awareness, your mindfulness. And what happens is, because you put that suggestion in, the guy is about to pick up the cigarette. Usually would not be aware of that at all until it was in the mouth already lit and smoke coming out. But because they put that suggestion in, suddenly you become aware as you're about to pick up that first cigarette. It's like an antivirus you put into your computer. That's why I call it programming your mindfulness. And if you don't believe me, there's a very simple exercise I will ask you to do tonight. And that is, if you haven't done this before, the first time I did this, it really shocked me just how effective this is. What time are you going to get up tomorrow morning? Say, for example, it is 4 o'clock in the morning, like the monks. Anyone getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning? Okay, let's try another time. Say it's 8 a.m., say. 8 a.m., is that still too early for some of you? 9? Well, let's just say 8:30 for the sake of the argument. You want to get up at 8:30 tomorrow morning. Set your alarm clock for 8:35. Just to give you some sense of security. If this doesn't work, you're only going to lose 5 minutes. And then as you go to bed tonight, you're tucked in, nice and comfortable, on your pillow, eyes shut, say to yourself, I will wake up at 8:30 a.m. I will wake up at 8:30 a.m. I will wake up at 8:30 a.m. Say that to yourself 3 times in your own words, pay full attention to it, and afterwards forget it and go to sleep. And you will be so surprised tomorrow morning. If you do this, according to the instructions, your eyes will open up tomorrow morning. And you say, what time is it? You look at the clock, 1 or 2 minutes either side of 8:30. It's so effective. And when I first did that as an 18-year-old, I thought, this is weird. No, I'm not checking the clock. Is it 8:20 yet? 8:25 yet? I'm not checking the clock. I just give the instructions into my brain, and it does it all by itself. Autonomous timekeeping. And once you start doing that, you understand just how you can program your mind for almost anything. And I often do that. You may be surprised to know I'm an incredibly busy monk. I do so many things. I am not CEO, I'm CEM, Chief Executive Monk of many Buddhist communities and societies and stuff all over the world. And there's so much stuff to be able to do. But if I have something I need to do, say tomorrow I must give somebody a call, I don't really need to sort of, put it in a diary or just, and I don't have a smartphone anyway to be reminded, or put string around your fingers. If I have something really important to do, I just close my eyes and say, I must remember to ring up the President, not of the United States, of the Buddhist Society. I must remember to ring up the President of the Buddhist Society tomorrow at 9:30. I must remember to ring her up at 9:30. I must remember to ring up the President of the Buddhist Society 9:30 tomorrow. And I've done it so many times, I trust it. I just say it to myself, pay full attention, forget it. And it's incredible. I'm doing something else, reading a newspaper tomorrow morning, because I have to do a lot of paperwork as a monk. Paperwork is a newspaper. And anyway, there we go, having to sort of reading something, and then just a thought comes up. Oh, you've got to ring up the President today. It just comes up by itself. You programmed it into your mind, and it works so well. I trust in that now, and it makes life so much easier. You don't have to keep worrying about it's your partner's birthday, sort of on Sunday. I must remember to get her a present. And you keep forgetting. Just tell yourself, I must remember tomorrow morning to get my partner a present. And you don't forget then. It saves a lot of suffering. Try it. But especially with addictions. Whatever the problem is, I won't sort of open up the first bottle of beer or something. You just tell yourself that. It means that the habit is broken. It arouses mindfulness at the cold face of addictions, the first time you're about to break the addiction. Because otherwise it becomes so hard. As some addict of heroin told me, I have to say no 1,000 times a day to keep off the heroin. I only have to say yes once and I'm back on it again. He said it's almost impossible. Imagine that. And say you don't have to do it that way. All you need to do is program your mindfulness. You don't always have to be alert. All you need to do is to say to yourself, I won't pick up that first piece of heroin. And then you go about your daily business, not stressed, not tense, and you find when you need the instructions, then they are there for you. Just like a virus, an antivirus sits in your computer doing nothing until the time it's needed, and then it switches on and stops you. So that is how we get our mindfulness to work on the important parts of our life. Now, it's not just addictions to things like the drugs and heroin and gambling and pornography and other stuff which we have in life. One of the things we get addicted to, which I'm focusing on now because it's such a great shame, I've seen this too often, husbands and wives or partners speaking badly to each other. And you know what it's like, the old joke, in the first year of marriage, the wife listens to the husband, in the second year of marriage, the husband listens to the wife, and the third year of marriage, the neighbours listen to both of them. You can tell how long people have been married by how they speak to one another. And you get into this terrible bad habit of, being nasty and saying bad things at each other, and one person says something bad, you say it bad back, and it just gets really terrible. And the two people, they love each other, they really care for each other. It's just a bad habit of speech towards one another. And I use programming mindfulness to teach people, don't do that. And this is all you need to do, because it's a habit, that's all it is. And it's a habit which gets, established by living with someone for such a long time. And of course, sometimes we're in a bad mood, we say something bad and we give it worse back, and then they give it back. It's tit for tat, it goes worse and worse, and it becomes such a bad habit. So how we overcome those bad habits, those addictions of bad speech, is that just when our partner's not there, when we're resting and peaceful somewhere, we say to ourselves, when my partner said something bad to me, I will say something nice back. When she says something bad, I will say something nice. When she says something bad, I will say something nice. Whatever it is, in your own words, instruct your mind. And then forget about it. Don't need to be tense, walking on eggshells with your partner. And you'll be amazed how it works. She gets a bit narky at you, or he says something really sort of uncalled for, and you're about to follow the old habit. You say, no, I'm not going to do that. You become aware there's another opportunity, another possibility. You say something nice. You break the habit. You say something nice when she calls you, you're late again. You said, yes, but I was missing you all the time and just looking forward to this moment to actually come. Whatever it is, something like that. And it really works. Because it breaks this bad habit, this tit-for-tat stuff. And it means that you can change the way you talk to one another. If there is something to talk to the other person about, something they really need to be told about, don't just go into that way of speaking. If you want to change the behavior of your partner because they're doing something wrong, don't talk to them like that when they come home from work all tired, stressed, and just had enough already. Take them out to dinner. Take them out to dinner to their favourite restaurant, 3 or 4 courses. And I guarantee, at the last course, you can tell your partner anything. They'll be so softened up that it will actually go in, they'll listen. That's the way to tell someone they've done something wrong. Treat them first. You've got to soften them up first of all. And then you can put the pill in and then maybe swallow it, because they're in a good mood and they're not so tired. But don't go this tit-for-tat business. That's like the bad habit. Now we've also got the bad habits of speech, the bad habits of thoughts which we have sometimes. People get negative. And this is one of those addictions which no one can see. Yeah, they can see if you're addicted to drinking, gambling. What else is... you know all the addictions people can have. But the addictions of bad thinking. And that's actually the core of all these other addictions, just that we get into bad habits of thought. And of course, one of the worst of those bad habits, those addictions, is the fault-finding mind. When I came across this in Buddhism, in the teaching of the Buddha, I thought, wow, what a great concept. It's like a mind which gets addicted always to finding faults in things. And I remember... just an example of this. When I was visiting my mother in London some years ago, And I was just walking from her apartment to a temple to give a talk, and I passed this two young men waiting for a bus, and they were sitting on a wall. But unfortunately, the wall was not flat. It was round bricks on the top. And they were complaining that they should not allow walls to be built like this. They should all be flat. And my goodness, you can complain about anything. What's wrong with that? At least you've got something to put your bum on. You don't have to stand. Yeah, it may not be flat, but it's good enough. What do you want? All the walls, the garden walls, to be upholstered with cushions and backrests for you? But you find that even in an advanced country, you can always find some fault. And that becomes such a bad habit of people. And you go to work, you find fault with your boss. You find my boss is stupid. But you should always think, if he was intelligent, would he have employed you? That's a good reflection. So, they pay you to go to work. What do you think they pay you for? You know, to put up with all this rubbish from the boss and the manager and all this other stuff. Your salary is a bribe to do something you'd rather not do. So if you really enjoyed your work, go and tell your boss. And then he would halve your salary. Oh, she enjoys working here, why should I pay her? So remember, don't be so fault-finding. And look, you only have to work 5 days a week these days. 6 days a week. Sometimes people used to have to work 7 days a week. In the olden times, 8 days a week, 400 days a year. At least that's what it felt like in some of these sweatshops and stuff like that. But we have it good today. We have beautiful houses where we have the better entertainment, just a flick of a switch, more than sort of, emperors and kings and queens would have. They didn't have the entertainment you have, and the soft beds, and the air cons to keep it cool, or keep it warm when it's cold. How can you complain when you've got what you've got? So this is one of the reasons why that fault-finding mind is an addiction. And it's an addiction which makes us so negative that even our beautiful partner, we always find fault with her or him. And as I keep on saying to you, please understand that your guy sitting next to you, if you get rid of him and get another one, it's exactly the same. If you haven't learnt this yet, you soon will. Guys, they're all the same. Girls, they're all the same too. They may have a different chassis, but the same engine inside. It's what they're like. So stick with the one you've got. It's good enough, for goodness sake. And the most important thing, stop trying to find fault with them. Now that is the addiction. We always get to this point of always being so negative, finding fault with our partner, fault with our kids. Remember when you were a kid? Your mum and dad? You're not studying hard enough. Clean up your room. Take the trash out. And you do all of that and you still find fault. You're not doing well enough at school. You're only getting B's. Get A's. Which is one of the reasons why I tell kids these days, when they get an F, you know what F means at school? Fantastic. E's means excellent. A's mean arrogant. So if you get an A at school, arrogant. You just up yourself. F for fantastic. E for excellent. D for damn brilliant. Give your kids a bit of a break. So you praise them instead of finding fault with them. And honestly, if you've got kids, just be mindful. How often do you praise them? And how often do you tell them off? How often do you find fault with them? And you complain about how kids behave? Listen to how you speak to them. Listen to how you speak to your partner. Listen to how your boss speaks to the workers. You can understand why there's so much unhappiness and stress. A little bit of praise instead of fault-finding. And get off that addiction to finding fault, and then much of depression, anger will disappear in this world. You get fault-finding. You come here and there's a traffic jam. Why are you finding fault? You're in a car. It's nice and comfortable. You're enjoying yourself in a traffic jam. You can just relax. You don't have to go fast. You don't have to worry about being caught by the speed cops and the cameras. I must have to tell everybody, I think, how many speeding fines has our monastery car got last month? About 3 or 4, I think. Yeah, something like that. Yeah, it's very embarrassing. We're supposed to be mindful and good and stuff like that. Oh, crikey. But you see, we make faults, and so we laugh at them. We tell everyone about them. But stop finding faults. One of the faults I haven't told you for a long time now. I don't know if I told this a couple of weeks ago, that when I first came here, it was about 32 years ago now, and I think it was another monk was the head monk for about the first 10 or 11 years. So the last 20 or 21 years I've been the boss monk. And when I first started, you always think you're a bit of a control freak when you first start. So about the first 6 months after taking over, I was walking through the grounds of our monastery, and I found some stupid, careless monk had left a hammer out in the grounds, and it was getting rusty. And you know that everything we get is your generosity, your donations. You put $5 or $2, in the box there, and that's how we live. Our food you bring to the monastery every day. We don't buy this ourselves. It's your generous donations. And I thought that some sort of senseless monk had just thought this was just a stupid old hammer, left it out in the bush to get rusty. They weren't caring for your donations. And if you found out that you give something and we don't care for it, we just leave it out to get rusty, you'd be rightfully upset. And why give charity if it's not respected? So I thought this was a very good opportunity to give a talk to all my monks. So I had a special meeting in the hall. And it wasn't, I noted, this time there was not one joke. This was serious. I blasted them and told them, look, we live on charity, you've got to respect charity. And who knows who gave this hammer? It might be somebody on a pension who saved up for that because they liked the monks, they liked having a monastery, they loved Buddhism, they wanted to help out, and they gave a monk, maybe they saved up for weeks for that hammer. And somebody just left it out in the bush to get rusty, you didn't care about it, that is not on. You can't do that, that is improper. I was really fierce. And I don't get fierce these days, as you will soon find out the reason why. Because after about 45 minutes of that, all of the monks, not one of them was sleepy, they were all sitting up dead straight. It's when you get told off like that, everyone gets so straight and afraid. And then we finished the talk, and I was waiting. I waited for about 3 or 4 minutes for the offender to put their hand up to confess. Yeah, it was them. I would have forgiven them. No, I'd done enough. I told them off. But not one monk put their hand up. No one. And that was the worst part of the whole thing. I thought maybe I'd gone a bit over the top. I scared them too much. But as long as you confess and say you've done something wrong, that's fair enough. And I left that hall so disappointed and sad that the monks didn't have enough guts to confess. And as I walked out the hall, I realized why they hadn't confessed. Because it suddenly came back to me that I had left the hammer out. It was me, and I'd forgot all about it. And it was only after I told all the monks off, really gave it to them, then I remembered. That was one of the most embarrassing moments in my life. As I went back in the hall, could you all please sit down? I've got an announcement to make. It was me. Have you ever done that in public? I'm sure you have, and it's very embarrassing, but at least I admitted it, and everyone laughed. But that's what happens when you're fault-finding. If you live in a fault-finding world, and you soon, it comes back at you, it's karma. So do you want to live in a world like that? Always finding fault and being negative, because if you do, you'll get a lot of depression, anger. You get anger at anybody. You can't live with anybody until you get to the point because no one's good enough. You don't allow your partner to make mistakes until you get so fault-finding you can't even live with yourself. And that's called depression. And that is also sometimes suicide. You can't live with yourself anymore. The fault-finding has become so addictive, you can see nothing good in you, or in anyone, or in life. Now that is the addiction I'm focusing on this evening. And it's so easy to overcome. Just first of all notice, just that is an addiction, a mental addiction to negativity. And to overcome it, once you realize it's an addiction, just have, say, half an hour of no negativity, just to try it out, temporarily. You can always go back to your fault-finding mind afterwards by sitting down and meditating. Remember the meditation, it's not finding fault, it's being at peace with yourself. Being at peace with your stupid mind. You can go all over the place, it can be absolutely ridiculous, it can fall asleep, we don't find fault. That is the attitude which we've tried to instill in this place on a Friday evening. And I still remember this case when, just over there somewhere, many years ago, during the meditation, somebody laid down, fell asleep and started snoring. Many years ago this happened, and 3 or 4 people woke her up. And I gave a talk afterwards. I said, what do you do that for? And I told her that particular woman, this was maybe 15, 20 years ago, she was a victim of really severe domestic abuse. And she came here, she hadn't slept for weeks. She came here on a Friday evening, and this was the first time she felt safe, protected. So she lay down and she went to sleep. I said, please, next time, let her sleep. Because we didn't know why, we were fault-finding. If you can stop fault-finding for a while, then you can understand why people do the things they do. Sometimes your husband comes and is negative to you because he's had a really difficult day at work. It's not him, it's just the stress of life. So please, let it go, forgive him. Sometimes managers, politicians, monks, whatever it is, there's difficulties we have in life. We're tired sometimes. So, always give people the benefit of the doubt. Big time benefit of the doubt. Even if it's so difficult to see any benefit of any doubt whatsoever, go to that higher level and give the person forgiveness. Don't be fault-finding, be forgiving. And then with that type of positive mind, you'll find you have far more fun and happiness in life. Instead of seeing the faults in life, you see just how beautiful this world is. You don't just see the lump of litter on the ground. You see all the grass around it, which is beautiful. And you can actually pick that litter up and just put it in the bin instead of complaining about it. And the same with your partner in life. Yeah, they may not be the best, but quite frankly, they're pretty good. Be honest. And you're not the best, but you are pretty good. And when you look at yourself like that, you can have such a happy life. And then you appreciate things rather than always trying to find fault with things. We spent hundreds of years trying to make a better world. Have we made a better world? Or have we made a more angry world? Fault-finding instead of appreciation. Sort of always pointing out, you're late. Thank you, you come at all. You're not the most beautiful, but yeah, you got a nice bum. That's good enough. But that sort of appreciation or whatever, That means that we have fun in life instead of always being so negative. And then we get up our addiction to this negative fault finding, which you see so often in the world. And it destroys people, destroys their health, destroys their everything. So again, going back to where I'm started, even sickness, don't be fault finding with sickness. There's nothing wrong with being sick. So if you've got a cough, cough. Thank you. And if you're tired, be tired. And give yourself a break. And that means when you see the doctor, many doctors come here and they come and tell me, saw one of your students yesterday. How do you know it's my student? Because they came into the consulting room and said, there's something right with me. I've got cancer again. So, that's one of Ajahn Brahm's students. But let that go, because that's a beautiful attitude. Thank you for listening. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Very good. Okay, so now we have the questions from overseas. See where we've got questions from today. Here we go. We've got from Malta, Maldives, and the United States. I don't know how you can find fault if you're in the Maldives. Beautiful place. But you can. For Malta, first of all, could stopping an addiction such as alcoholism make you addicted to being a control freak? Likewise, can addiction to freedom also be accomplished? Great question, because sometimes people come up, you're just addicted to being a monk, Ajahn Brahm. Come on, try being a layperson for 3 months. Say, no, this is letting go. Letting go of so many stuff. Being free of alcohol, you are free of the addiction to alcohol. So don't try and mess around with words and think freedom is an addiction. That's an oxymoron. You can't be free and be addicted at the same time. Freedom is the opposite of addiction. So when you do let go of stuff, of course you're free. This is what freedom feels like. That's how we describe it. So it's not being a control freak, it's actually quite the opposite. It is because the alcohol controlled you. Now you can let it go. You can actually control the alcoholism. Sometimes people, if they do want to drink at Christmas or something, they can take one drink and then they're fine. They don't take a second drink because now they're in control again. Instead of always having to have a second drink, they can go to the casino and just, it's on a birthday or something, okay, $100, I'm just going to just spend $100, and once it's all gone, then I'm going to go home again. That's much different than the person who has to keep winning and they get into huge amounts of debt because of that. It's not being a control freak, it's being a wise person. Control is much different. Control is fault finding, then we find control. We don't find any fault, there's nothing to control anymore. Your partner is fine, so you don't need to control them, you just appreciate them. From the Maldives, can a feeling of pain, for example a migraine, become an addiction? Like addiction to thinking over and over about the pain. I think this can happen with most chronic diseases. Now that's a very interesting idea, because I did go to a grief and loss conference once where I gave a really good, what I thought was a good talk on how to overcome grief. All the strategies which work. And then this woman came up. She was the mother of one of the victims of the Claremont serial killer. I forget which one, but her daughter had disappeared, presumed dead, and she was the mother. And so she was going to all of these grief and loss conferences throughout Australia. And when I gave her an opportunity of letting go of her grief, she came up to me almost nose to nose and said, "What right have you to take away my grief?" And when she said that, that was just an eye-opener to me. That she was addicted to her grief. That was who she was. That gave her a lot of compassion from other people. She'd become the grieving mother of a victim of the Claremont serial killer. And to take that away from her was taking away much of who she thought she was, and all the privileges which came with the suffering as well. So there's an interesting point there. Can, like a migraine. be an addiction to the pain. Because all pain, they do have some benefits to it. Some sicknesses have benefits. And sometimes if you see the benefits with that condition, sometimes you take the pain so you can have the benefits. A story which makes this very clear. There was this guru when I was a young man called Ram Dass, one of these long-haired hippies. Went to India, taking lots of drugs and thinking that was spiritual awakening. A weirdo, but he did say some wise things as well. And he went to the United States, got a few disciples. He was from Harvard, apparently. He got a few disciples. And one of his lady disciples said, "Look, my father is really sick, in constant pain in hospital. Can you come and visit him, give him some counseling?" So he said, "Yeah, I'll go in." So he went into one of these hospitals in the United States. And her father was like a redneck, typical United States Caucasian redneck. So when he saw this hippie in his robes and beads coming in, he just, "What are you doing? Get out of here. I'm not going to listen to you, you freak." And so, he wouldn't take any counselling. So his daughter started talking to her father. And apparently Ram Dass, nothing else to do, decided to give this patient a foot massage. Just something nice to do. And he's giving a foot massage. And for the first time in days, all the patient's pain disappeared. The pain vanished. It was like a miracle. And this guy said, "Get off my feet, you freak!" He'd rather have the pain and have his whole worldview and philosophy intact than get the pain away and having to face that there was many things in his life which he didn't understand. And that was a good example of addiction to pain rather than giving up your views about what life is and what the reality is or what religion is. And that was really quite an interesting story. So sometimes pain can be an addiction. And it's interesting actually to explore that. Often it probably isn't. There's probably a physical reason there, but it's worth exploring. Chronic pain. Is it because it's like another addiction? Can you let it go? Well, lastly, for the United States, I'm addicted to trying to be more wise and mindful. Give up. You've got no chance. And then you're wise and mindful. If it's our default habit to be unmindful, it's craving improvement in mindfulness and addiction to non-acceptance. Actually, the default position is being mindful. That's the default position. When you stop doing stuff, you stop thinking about the future, worrying about the past, thinking about this, thinking about that. The default position is silence. This is meditation teaching from Ajahn Brahm. He would hold up his hand. This is for Lisa in the United States. I'm not saying goodbye to you. He said, this hand represents a leaf on a tree. And it only moves like this because there's a wind blowing. If the wind stops, the leaf still moves, but less and less and less until it comes to a stop. Because the default position of a leaf is to be still. It's only the wind makes it move. And Ajahn Brahm said the default position of the human mind is to be still. It's the wind of wanting something makes you move. So actually, the default position of the mind is to be still when you don't want anything. So if you try to be more wise and mindful, if you want wisdom, if you want mindfulness, you never achieve it. This is a deep teaching. If you stop all your wanting, your leaf becomes perfectly still, your mind. And now you understand what mindfulness is. This is big mindfulness, great stillness and huge wisdom. That's what we do in meditation retreats. That's what monks and nuns do. We don't want anything. When we don't want anything, your mind becomes still. But if you want to be still, it never becomes still. If you want mindfulness, if you want anything, it always moves. And you're agitated, and you're tired, and you think. But when you stop wanting, the leaf moves less and less until it's perfectly still. That's mindfulness and wisdom. And okay, I'm going to put this one in as well. This, because I usually only do these similes and meditation retreats, but it's great that I can give it to you guys as well. The best simile which Ajahn Chah ever gave, in my opinion, he gave this the first year I was a monk. I forgot it for many years until I remembered it, and wow, this was brilliant. And it is actually in Good, Bad, Who Knows, the book, because I wanted to put it in somewhere. It's never been published before. He said his monastery in the northeast of Thailand was a mango orchard where the mango trees had been planted by the Buddha. Okay, this is not real, this is a simile. And he said now every one of those mango trees in his monastery planted by the Buddha is full of hundreds of sweet and delicious mangoes. But, he told us monks, and I tell you, if you want one of those mangoes, if you shake the tree, no mango will fall. If you climb the tree, you'll never reach one. If you throw a stick up, none will fall. Even no ladder is high enough to reach them. The only way you can get one of those mangoes from the trees planted by the Buddha is to sit perfectly still under the mango tree. Open up your hand and a mango will fall. That's absolutely brilliant. Perfectly still, not wanting a thing in the world. Open up your heart and all these mindfulness, wisdom, enlightenment, it just falls in to your mind. You try and climb the tree, no way. Shake it, you'll be shaking it until you die. Throw a stick up and the stick will hit you back on the head. Sit perfectly still. Open your heart and then the mangoes fall. Okay, thank you for listening. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Very good. And thank you for overseas questions. Any question here, by the way? Okay, you can line up afterwards, ask a question. So that's enough now, it's 9 o'clock. So let's pay respects to Buddha, Dhamma and Sangha, and then we can go and do what we need to do. Arahang Sama Sambuddho Bhagava Buddhang Bhagavantang Abhivademi Suakato Bhagavata Dhammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipano Bhagavato Sawaka Sangho Sanghang Namami. There you go.